Welcome to this episode of our program, Daily Debate. As usual, we will be speaking about an important debate. Today we'll be speaking about one of the most important topics of what we need at this upcoming stage. We're speaking about education. Egypt, the new republic, necessitates the investment in human capitals, and part of that is investing in education. Implementing the strategy of Egypt's vision, or 2030 vision, improvises high-quality education and a training system available to all without discrimination within an efficient, just, sustainable and flexible institutional framework. Tonight we'll be speaking about that in our episode with our dear guest, Dr. Dina Boraei, Provost at the Knowledge Hub Universities. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all ours. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the top stories of the day. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi exchanged greeting cables with Arab and Muslim leaders on the occasion marking the new Hijri year. The President said the Hijra by Prophet Muhammad, peace and praise be upon him, forms a prominent turning point in the history of the Islamic nation, and called on God that the new year would bring peace, prosperity to the Arab and Islamic world, in which the aspiration of the peoples would be realized. President Sisi also sent a greeting cable to the Egyptian expats on this occasion. And Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli held a cabinet meeting on Thursday in the new city of Al Alamein and congratulated President Sisi, the government and the Egyptian people on the occasion of the Islamic New Hijri year. During the meeting, the Prime Minister spoke about the state's ongoing efforts to address global economic crises, including measures taken to expand the social protection, particularly for the low-income brackets. The Prime Minister also spoke about this second meeting of the High Committee of the Integrated Industrial Partnership for Sustainable Economic Development initiative that brought together Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan and Bahrain. He stressed on the importance of the initiative in strengthening cooperation among those countries for the aim of consolidating the industrial sector and increase its contribution to the GDP. The Premier also reviewed developments that occurred this week, foremost of which was President Sisi's successful foreign tour to Germany, Serbia and France, which reflected the global appreciation of the Egyptian role and its weight regionally and globally, as well as supporting its positions in various fields. The Prime Minister said that the visits also represent an opportunity for the President to invite the leaders of these countries to attend the COP27 climate conference, which will be hosted at the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh by next November. Dr. Madbouli referred to the visit of the Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud to Cairo, which reflected keenness to enhance aspects of cooperation with Somalia and Egypt's willingness to continue providing support to the brotherly country, directing the ministers in coordination with the Foreign Ministry, with the aim of supporting bilateral cooperation frameworks between both countries, building on the historical relations and aspects of bilateral cooperation between Egypt and Somalia in areas of common interests. To our next and final top story, and Minister of Defense of the Armed Forces, General Mohammed Zaki, met on Thursday with a number of commanders and officers of the armed forces appointed to assume leadership positions at the armed forces. Lieutenant General Mohammed Zaki, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and Minister of Defense and Military Production, delivered a speech in which he conveyed greetings for President Sisi and congratulated all the commanders and officers for assuming leadership positions at the various levels. This is considered a major responsibility placed on their shoulders to preserve homeland stability and security. The meeting was in presence in the presence of Lieutenant General Osama Askar, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, war leaders of the main branches, and a number of senior leaders. The meeting comes within the framework of a series of periodic meetings implemented by the General Command of the Armed Forces to communicate with its fighters, to unify concepts on a number of issues and topics related to the armed forces. And before we delve into our discussion with our dear distinguished guest, let me first have this quick report, and we'll come back for more discussion.
Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Khalid Abdel Ghaffar, said that £85 billion were allocated for universities and higher education institutions in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Speaking at a press conference following a cabinet meeting, Abdel Ghaffar said that 902 projects will be carried out in various educational fields at an estimated cost of £197 billion. The minister noted that the number of state-run universities increased to 27 this year, including 516 faculties, while the number of civil and privately owned universities amounted to 40. Abdel Ghaffar pointed out that 3 technological universities started operating 2 years ago, while 6 others will be up and running soon. Sisi has given education priority as a main pillar of national development. The head of state said that quality education is a human right, considering that giving a poor education is tantamount to depriving a person of the opportunity to live. He added that a quality education enables the graduate to provide job opportunities and participate genuinely in society. President El-Sisi affirmed the seriousness of the Egyptian state with an unrelenting will in order to confront challenges, including education, which is the basis for nation building. He called on the great universities all over the world to help Egypt to have real knowledge and education at the level that exists there. The president has always expressed his support for developing the education system within the framework of the state strategy to build the Egyptian character and invest in human beings.
Right, welcome back, and let me again welcome our guest, Dr. Dina Boraei, Provost of the Knowledge Hub Universities, and thank you again for being with us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
Our pleasure. So we're speaking about this very important sector that Egypt has put in the forefront of its priorities for its sustainable development vision.
Yes.
How far has this file become inevitable and important to an enormous levels?
Let's talk about higher education. And higher education is the core of bringing us into the 21st century, where all the skills that we need in order for us to compete internationally. And so what is very important about higher education is to make sure that what our young people are studying is the latest in terms of technology, knowledge, skills, such that they are able to work in any country in the world and also to contribute to Egypt. For example, right now a lot of new universities have started, and these universities are either they're the international universities or our wow universities like Cairo University and Shams. They partner with international partners, and say they bring in the know-how, and the know-how is something we need. And for example, COP27, well, we're talking about the environment. We need our young people to study environmental engineering, industrial engineering, all of these fields that need to be updated within our universities, whether our fabulous public universities or the private universities.
Since you brought up the issue of some of the new universities or the new sectors that we are applying in our universities, then we need to understand together what kind of education are we applying in the meanwhile, and how far does it suit our requirement? What do we need more at this upcoming stage?
When we talk about private universities, we have to talk about the different models. For example, the university that I'm very familiar with, which I graduated from, the American University in Cairo. This is a private university. It's 103 years old, and it is of a very unique university which has its own, not its own law, but it started so many years ago. It's different from any other university in Egypt. It's very unique. Its system and how it is run. So it is a private university, but it is not like the some of the new universities that have, new private universities that have started. We have other private universities, they have different models. Some private universities...
We're not supposed to be saying all the names, right?
I didn't say any name. Oh.
You did.
Oh, oh sorry. It's my,
no,
my alma mater.
Please,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. The universities that we have now in Egypt are diverse. I'm talking now about not only the national universities, but also the private universities. And one of the interesting models, because there's as we saw now in a few minutes ago, in 2018 there was this new law, the 162 law of 162, that regulates private universities and allows private universities to bring in international branch campuses, what they call IBCs. So we have a number of universities here in Egypt now, and we have a number of universities in the new administrative capital that follow this model. Now, why is it an interesting and an important model, and that the minister, the Minister of Higher Education, His Excellency Dr. Khalid, was pushing for this? Because we want to stop the brain drain. We don't want our young people to go and leave Egypt, study abroad, and never come back. This is a great loss for us. What was the whole vision of that law, and to start this new model of international branch campuses, IBCs, is to make sure that we can provide degrees and very, very, let's say, high quality international degrees without them leaving Egypt. So now we have universities that host IBCs, and that all the students here in Egypt study for 4 years and get a bachelor's degree from an international university, whether it's in Europe or in other countries in the world, Canada, and so on. They live here, study here, and the degree comes from the university from overseas.
Exactly. I mean here that the president has already called on some of the international universities to come and kind of merge with the Egyptian universities, or get their universities on our land. And that is one of the issues that I really need.
Can you explain what does it mean to bring?
I mean Canadian universities, I mean British universities,
yes.
I'm speaking about the Japanese also universities, other universities, of course Japanese between schools and universities. This is what I'm speaking about. So the president has called on some of the world countries. Exactly.
Yes, and this is exactly what's happening.
Exactly. How important is that? Why the president have sought such...
Two reasons. One of them is for one of the models is to stop the brain drain. And then for the other model is, again, to make sure that we are producing young Egyptians who have knowledge, skills, and competencies that are equal to the rest of the world. We need to compete in the global economy. And Egypt is a great country, and we should be able to be at the level of all over what is happening all over the world. So this is why the president and of course then the minister and so on is executing this, as you said, the 2030 vision.
When we speak about upgrading the level of our education, because this is a full upgrading to the levels of education.
It is a full upgrading.
Indeed. So if we speak about that, then we have to prepare both sides. the
You want to
students.
talk about this, the faculty or the...
No. I'm speaking about increasing the abilities and the level of the student himself and the lecturer or
Exactly,
the professor.
The academics, yes.
So what exactly or how are we doing that all together? I mean here, university professors as well as the authorities and the ministries.
The interesting thing is what happens is that when an Egyptian university partners with an international partner in whatever model, because I wanted to make it very clear that there are different there are different models here in Egypt, that the relationship between the university here with the international university varies depending on the different agreements and the flexibility that the law has provided, whether for dual degrees or, as I just mentioned, the IBCs. These are all very interesting models that also contribute to transnational education. Transnational education has started in the Arab countries, and now we, Egypt, we are now running with it to make sure that we bring in the latest knowledge. Now, your point about asking why, because and your point about are we able to meet those quality standards with our faculty? The thing,
not of course your faculty, but I'm speaking.
No, in our faculty, I mean in Egypt's faculty.
Yes, indeed.
It's not.
Indeed.
I'm not talking about.
Yes.
One specific university. It's an excellent question. The thing is, what happens is when there are a lot of very, very highly educated Egyptians who have obtained their degrees from overseas and sometimes would love to come back to their country and work. They have their PhDs, they have their master's degrees from overseas. And so a lot of these universities attract these Egyptians because these Egyptians who have been educated overseas, when they come into a university where the curriculum is familiar to what they studied overseas, they would be able to contribute to the university and teach. And what happens is when you hire young Egyptian faculty who haven't had this exposure, but you have a senior professor who has had this exposure, what happens is then you develop a very large number of young professors. They will learn from their colleagues. They will learn from the expertise that our Egyptian professors have. In some universities, they bring in foreigners. They will bring in, so if it's a British university, they will bring in British professors. And then after a while, the British professors will not stay forever. They will leave Egypt. And we will have a very, very strong cadre of young Egyptian professors. So your question is very much in place, where not only is there education of the students, there's also development of our
calibers, educational calibers.
The academic calibers, yes. They are high caliber professors now, and we should, as Egypt, be very proud.
Indeed.
Yes.
But also I'm speaking on the other hand.
Yes.
About the students. We are aware that our students who were graduated from schools going to universities are not all the same level of education or capability or ability. So how are we trying to find solution for that? I mean here, how are we trying to put each student in what he can cope with, and at the same time cope with his abilities, studies, and all this?
Are you talking at the K-12 now side?
I'm speaking what is a preparation for the higher education, which is indeed the primary, the primary and and even the elementary.
You're very right, and this is why the current Minister of Education, Dr. Taresh, he came in 2017 with a vision. I don't know. I'm sure we're all very familiar with it, called Education 2.0. And Education 2.0 is the new education system, which is, like you're saying exactly, all of the curriculum have been revamped. That is, we are now, all our curriculum are now aligned from kindergarten until grade 6.
Yes,
primary 6.
Primary 6,
We are now, our curriculum is aligned with international standards. If anyone comes and evaluates any of the learning materials, we have the latest. Of course, the challenge is it's much easier to design the curriculum and to have it ready. But you will probably ask me, what about the teachers? That's the challenge. It takes time to build and to develop teachers and get them up to date with the knowledge that they haven't been following or they haven't been learning about over the years. It's taking a long time. Not only we are training teachers in the content, we're also training them in the teaching methods, because we no longer teach, for example, English or Arabic, A, B, C, D. No, we don't teach this way. We teach it in a completely different approach. We teach them the letters, well done, of how to read,
yes,
and not just to say the alphabet, and so on. So everything is changing, and I think what's happening is wonderful. I've been talking to some young parents about the new curriculum, and there is a lot of, let me tell you, there's a lot of anger against the new curriculum because it's new and it's difficult for a number of teachers, and if teachers are having a problem, the parents complain, and that's part of the problem. It needs time for teachers to develop and become very much aware of how to teach this new curriculum, because we are trying to run to make sure we can achieve the dream by 2030, and it's not easy.
Definitely nothing is easy,
and it's going to take
mission,
time.
by the way.
And so Education 2.0 will improve much better over time. So if we go back, if we wait for another few years, it will be very powerful, because then the teachers would have lots of experience in how to offer this new curriculum.
If we speak about we need to, as we can say, to provide a kind of education with full college integrity. At the same time, we need to provide quality education. What, from your point of view, are the real challenges that are really facing, approaching this status that we need to?
That we want to. We have to all admit that COVID has had a terrible, terrible impact on education, whether it's schools or higher education. Especially in higher education, all universities have faced a lot of problems from students where they have mental health issues. Being stuck at home, trying to study from a screen was very difficult for them and affected them very negatively, whether in the learning process and the mental health. So this is one of the challenges that we are facing now. We're still, we went back on the ground last year, so it's only been 1 year, and we have noticed in all the different universities, whether the private or public, that the students found it hard to get back to that routine of studying and not depending on the Google and so on, because there were lots of challenges during COVID, and post-COVID is to try to get them back as we used to. So this was one problem. And a lot of education research that has been done has shown that, unfortunately, education suffered during COVID, and now
Very
we know,
much. And our children as well.
and our children, and we know as researchers now that online education for K to 12, kindergarten to grade 12, and for higher education doesn't work. It has to be in person. This is the most effective method. Of course, for masters and PhDs, online education works well. In fact, very well. So this is one of the things we learned from COVID. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I went off track, but it is the challenge was to get back the students on track for this past year, to go back as we were. This was very hard, whether for schools or for universities. When we talk about, one of the things you mentioned, was it you're talking about ethics? Or that wasn't your question?
No, it was actually not speaking about the ethics, but rather integrity, a college of integrity. We are aware that we need to put our children all on course in terms of boys and girls receiving the same education, and at the same time, the availability of having quality education at affordable price. This is what I was speaking about.
You were talking about equity, and it is a problem. All over the world, I mean, any country strives to make sure that there is equity across the board. But in some cases, that's difficult to achieve.
To realize.
And what happens in the when we have universities with very, very high tuition fees, and you have universities that are basically supported by the country, where students do not have to pay for their higher education when they go into the public universities, or it is minimal fees that they have to pay. So yes, there is inequity. What happens is, to balance this inequity, there are scholarships. Scholarships, but of course, scholarships cannot be granted to everybody. And I have no answer and no solution for that, because, by the way, this happens. The UN makes sure, I mean, if you want to, that any child has the right to have a quality education. This is and this is what is in Egypt's, I mean, this is what we do. All children in Egypt have that privilege.
Indeed.
That they study from until Thanawi Amma for free, or for very low fees, because they can't afford anything beyond that. You're asking me, is it fair that we have the private
schools?
schools?
Not speaking about the private,
because I cannot,
about fairness, because yes, definitely there is. We're not speaking here about the fairness of the issue. We're speaking here about quality education, which should be given to everybody, even.
I see. I finally understood your question.
But how fair?
Yes.
Not necessarily.
You're right. It is a challenge. I have to admit, it's not easy to provide that high quality education with minimal resources, and I can't deny that whatever we do and whatever Egypt does, it's hard to make it equal. That's all I can say. But you're right. Every child has the right to have a quality education.
When we speak about this revolution in the world of education, because ever since President Sisi has assumed office, and he has been putting education in the forefront of the priorities.
Absolutely.
Here we've seen even the government allocating £85 billion to just for universities and higher education institutions.
Yes.
For the fiscal year 22-23.
Yes.
Coming year. How important is that? Why is it high time for us to take education seriously in this upcoming stage? Why has the President stressed to put this file in the forefront of all other
Because educated citizens will be able to build the country further. And what happens is when people or young people are not well educated, they will not, first of all, they will not be able to contribute to the body of knowledge and to what we need and to Egypt's economy. The other part is that sometimes young people can be taken into to a different direction from what we want as a country, because they do not have the background and education to listen to what others say and balance between what is
awareness,
right,
the battle of
and
awareness.
what is wrong, and being aware of the where we should be going as a country. So if we don't have well-educated citizens, we will have troubles and challenges.
There will be
as what
misled.
happened in our recent history. It's been this is one of the reasons why we realize we need to educate young people to make sure they understand how the world works. It's very important.
Indeed. Here, the government has carried out with several educational projects, and speaking about, by the way, the strategy to improve services here, the Minister of Higher Education was speaking about 902 projects that will be carried out in various educational fields.
Yes.
Of course, the cost is very much high, but of course, we need that. Can you tell us more about this?
The investment, I mean, there are a lot of people in Egypt who are very much supporting education.
Yes.
In terms of businesses, men or women, because everybody believes. Oh, I think when you talk to anyone, everybody will say yes, yes, yes. We need to contribute to education and to improve the quality and everything. Everybody's in alignment with this. And when Dr. Khalid came up with the vision in alignment with the 2030 vision, which is we must spend, because you can't create something from nothing. We do need to invest. Investments will come from the private sector and from the public sector. And so this is what's happening. For example, if they created special sections within the public universities for higher fees, we have what they call Tigara in English, or commerce studied in English, and all of these different models within the private, the public universities has also increased the quality of for education. There is investment, whether from individuals or from the government or from the businessmen. I think that there is, and this is driven by the vision. Egypt has changed. The education scene in Egypt has changed dramatically, and I think for the better. Whether kindergarten to grade 12 or higher education.
Here I would refer to education with regard to girls and women.
Okay, I'm ready for that. Yes.
Because we have seen lately how important is it to engage women in every aspect of life. Part of that is engaging the girls in education. How far have we carried out with this? And another issue is how are we empowering women since they are girls up to what they have achieved today?
One of the things that we've added starting from grade 1 is this focus on ethics. That's why I mentioned it before. There was a request from the president that we should produce such one lesson, a couple of lessons with some learning materials to focus on that. And one of the most important things is that we always make sure that there is always a balance between girls and boys, whether in the pictures of any book, to make sure that there is no... We want to make sure that girls will contribute equally to the society as boys. And we also want to make sure that within the learning materials, a girl can be a pilot if she wants. Or
I have a friend of mine who is already a pilot, Hasni.
Wow. And we actually we use our curriculum to give these messages, to show that girls are capable of doing what boys do in terms of professions, in work and careers, in learning and the knowledge they gain. And also indirectly, that's how, you know, when you create a curriculum, you add a lot of things in all the different subjects, whether it's Arabic, English, even social studies. We add all of these concepts to make sure it is appearing there over and over, year after year. And this is one of our approaches in handling, to try and make sure that girls and boys are equal in terms of their value to society, and that they have equal rights. So this is all in there, even to the extent of how we try and make sure that the violence against girls, and to minimize that, and making sure that in schools it's very hard where we don't have teachers going around with a stick.
Definitely, that's
this is very, I mean, it's very old-fashioned, and it takes time to move away from these old practices. So we're trying. I cannot guarantee that we have succeeded 100% in all schools in Egypt.
We will.
Inshallah.
And we're filled of hope. My final question, and I have only 1 minute left for me.
Very good.
How important is it to open horizons of cooperation opportunities, not just in Egypt, but with the world institutions, particularly in education?
We already have. Egypt is very active with all the different institutions that are supporting Egypt. All the agencies, name them, they are supporting Egypt. And then, in terms of, as we just said at the beginning, all the different partnerships, whether IBCs or dual degrees and so on, all of these partnerships with higher education, they are coming and partnering with Egypt. So I want to tell you, it's all good news, and inshallah to continue.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and we all are praying for that.
Yeah.
Dr. Dina Boraei, Provost of the Knowledge Health Universities, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, many thanks for watching, and I guess that brings us to the end of this episode. My next daily debate will be on Sunday, so until then, it's good night.